Thanks so much for joining me for this episode of the But First She Failed podcast. We are in the middle of August. Here, kids are starting to go back to school. My kids are actually going back to school. I cannot believe that summer is coming to an end. It's crazy. I feel like we just blinked and summer just started and now we're here. We're at the beginning of the school year. And when school starts, maybe you don't have kids yet, but your summer Fridays are coming to an end. You're starting to ramp up at work for fall. But fall happens to be a time of transition, not just with leaves and not just with what's going on outside. So often in our lives with our careers and businesses, companies are hiring. A lot of people move positions in this time. I thought it would be really fitting to conversation about career transitions and how to do it with excellence and how to do it without crisis. So today's guest is actually a seasoned career coach and a strategic people operations consultant with a diverse professional journey spanning e-commerce, retail technology, and consumer goods. Throughout her career, she has honed her skills with crafting precise career narratives, which is super important, developing talent strategies, perfecting interview skills, and helping individuals find clarity in their transferable skills, which is crucial, guys. She's also deeply committed to supporting those navigating sensitivity, workplace trauma, which is very real. Workplace trauma is a very real thing. And the challenges of the current career landscape. She is just such a boss. She's got over 20 years of experience with people functions and executive leadership and has coached over 400 people over the last 10 years. She's worked with professionals ranging from early career to C-suite executives with organizations ranging from seed stage startups to all the way to Fortune 10 companies. So all of the things and everything in the middle. Her name is Kate Sargent, and she's a career coach. And I am just so excited. I learned a ton from her, and I know you will too. So I'm so excited to get into it. But before we do, I just want to remind you of the accountability calls that are taking place in September. I mentioned them last week's episode. It's something that I'm doing and I'm so excited. It's really going to be a call. It's going to be a 1 hour free Zoom call. So if you are someone that is struggling with the thing that you want to do, maybe you have like a goal or a project, something that's on your heart and you really want to do this thing, but you feel like you're doing it alone. Maybe you're getting stuck because you don't really have anyone to talk to about these things. It's just kind of like you're ruminating on the same things. Then this call is for you. These accountability calls, again, it's the first time we're ever doing it. So we're going to test it out. So if you would like to be part of this group, it's a completely free call. It's a 1 hour coaching call where I will be there. I'll be coaching as well as other women. So you can be in the hot seat and ask your questions and we can all help you. It's a kind of a group effort kind of a thing, if you will. And so I am so excited. Please do not hesitate to fill that out. All you have to do is go to the show notes, click on the link that says accountability, fill that out. It's a quick survey. Just fill out the survey. And then I'm going to have your name and your email and you'll just be added to our email list. And I will send you a personal email with the information for next month's call. I'm so excited about this. So please join me next month in September for the accountability calls. Now let's get back to today's episode. We are talking about navigating career transitions without crisis with Kate Sargent. She's a career coach and I learned so much. It's an understatement to say how much I learned. So let's get into it. Navigating career transitions without crisis.
Kate, thank you so much for being here today. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you.
Me too. I'm so excited. Thanks for having me.
Hey, so I'm going to ask you the icebreaker question that I ask everyone when they come on the podcast. What did you fail at this week?
What did I fail at this week? Well, I failed at being on time for probably most of the meetings that I was in this week.
Yeah.
And I failed at being chill. I think I'm not a great chill person, and I live in the sort of high functioning anxiety world most of the time. And I've been trying to be more chill for summer because I have kids and they get really hyped up during summer, but I'm not doing a great job at that because camp schedules are going to kill me. So,
yes. Yeah. I hear you and I feel you with that. Yes, I'm the same way. So I'm like trying to be like, I'm doing the slower summer thing, but it's been kind of hard. And yes, schedules with like the camp and all the things. And so my slow summer it hasn't been quite the slow summer that I thought it was going to be, but it's fine. It's fine, right?
Well, I have a 7 and an 8-year-old. One's about to be 9. So there's really no chill in our world in general in the 7 and 8-year-old world. So
yeah, same. I have a 5-year-old and one and almost 2-year-old. So yeah.
Oh, you have a tiny one.
Yeah. So there's definitely no chill. But so, oh my gosh. Okay. Can you let us know a little bit about what you do? Let the listeners know a little bit about your business and all that. I'd love to hear about it.
Yeah, I'd love to. So I started my career out in retail. I was headed for law school and decided at the last minute not to go. And I was like, I'm just going to take a year off. Wound up in retail for 10 years, district manager, kind of worked my way up, training manager, recruiting manager. And then I worked in recruiting for years as global head of talent acquisition, took a couple companies to IPO and acquisition. And then as the VP of people operations, my last role, took it to acquisition and then decided to go out on my own. But I'd been doing executive coaching for almost 9 years on the side, teaching people how to get their resumes in shape, how to figure out how to navigate an HR situation, you name it, performance coaching, leadership, whatever it was. But the career coaching was the thing that really I got known for through word of mouth. So when I came out on the market this last year, I turned it into a full-time gig and then turned it into a fully functioning fractional business. So I have multiple fractional clients that I'm the chief human resources officer for. And then I built that and built that. And now I have coaching programs, group coaching. I've got all sorts of different angles. I have my own podcast called Career Hacks and Snacks. And, just kind of snowballing and continuing to grow this consulting business. And then I also have a consulting collective called the Plus One Collective, which is all about consultants who are like independent consultants, solopreneurs that have a give back model as part of their business. So everyone who is in the Plus One Collective has some sort of free pro bono sliding scale work that they do for nonprofits or folks in need.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And I think it's so cool what you just talked about fractional, like the whole fractional CMO, like
Yeah, the revolution of fractional.
it's like such a cool thing. I only learned about it maybe 2-3 years ago, but still, I mean, I'm not in the corporate space anymore, but I still don't hear that much about it. So I still feel like it's relatively kind of a new model. And I actually was interviewing someone last week and she was talking about the whole fractional model and all that. And so I think it's really cool. So you essentially do what a senior HR person would do for a company, but you do it for, I'm sure a fraction of the cost, a fraction of the time, all the things for smaller companies that maybe don't need a full-time HR executive, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the wave of the future too, because with all the AI and the work that we're trying to sort of source out from people, you still need those high-level executives to come in with the strategy and build the programs and train the people and train the programs. So yeah, I mean, in a lot of cases, especially with the smaller organizations, you don't necessarily need a full-time HR person at the top, but you do need someone strategic enough to plan that stuff out for you so that you're able to like build your business and grow your business. So I think fractional is the wave of the future for the executives out there in the world. So if you're interested in fractional, find out more about it, figure out what your zone of genius is in that space and start crafting a space for yourself for when you decide to go out on your own, or even if you want to do something on the side. So yeah, you can do anywhere from 10 to 20 to 30 hours a week as a fractional, but ultimately you're not an employee is kind of the main piece of it. You're still running teams, running organizations, running departments, but not necessarily at a full-time level because a lot of times people aren't ready for that or can't afford it.
Right. I love that. I'm obsessed with the model. I think it's such a great model. And like you said, it's the wave of the future. So that is so cool. I love how you were combining HR consulting with career coaching. Makes so much sense. Duh. Like if you're going to give career advice, talk to an HR representative because they know exactly, or someone in HR because they know exactly what recruiters are looking for, what people are looking for, depending on their role in HR. So I just love how you kind of combine these two things. Could you talk to us a little bit about what led you to starting this, like your career, your background, and, just essentially what led to this idea?
Yeah. So, I mean, for me, it was, I was working in recruiting for so many years, and I always joke about, I was doing everything for free. That was my both fatal flaw and the thing that built my business was I started doing it for all my friends. People would be like, Kate, you're a recruiter. You understand what people are looking for. Can you rewrite my resume? It was like that whole, can I pick your brain situation? And I was like, yeah, rewrite your resume. I got really excited about it. But then I learned it took me 9 hours because I was such a perfectionist to make sure every last word was exactly right for people. Yeah. And so I started telling people that would come to me with their resumes, I would say, okay, I'm going to do it for free for you, but you bring me 2 paying clients. And I just started joking about that with all of my friends. And then people started bringing me paying clients who started bringing me more paying clients. And then all of a sudden in 2 years, I had this thriving side business that I literally had to build into my contracts for my full-time jobs because I was doing it nights and weekends. It was like I couldn't hide it anymore because I was doing this, on the side type of work. But the thing about working in HR and the thing about working in talent acquisition is it's a black box, right? It's one of those spaces that people just don't understand. I liken it to like realty, right? Where like I could never do my own transaction for buying my own house. Yeah. I have no idea how it works and you need a realtor for it. I think like HR is that sort of space as well. where we try and make it a little bit too complicated, and it doesn't need to be. Same goes with recruiting. So to me, anything you can do in a space where they call it the third most stressful thing, death, divorce, and losing your job. So
Oh,
anytime I can help somebody navigate a space that's really confusing and doesn't need to be, that was something that I was really excited about doing. So
wow.
my background in recruiting and HR and then running teams really helped me kind of turn this into a business for coaching. And one of the things I learned too when I came out on the market full time was I just was like, I'll just offer some free coaching. You know, I still do this too. I do 20-minute free coaching sessions. I do up to 10 of them a week. And I was like, I'll just offer this out there to the world and see what happens after I, kind of finish my last acquisition. And the first day, 47 people signed up for my free coaching. And I was like, oh God, what have I done?
Wow.
But they were CEOs and they were CMOs and and that was just a very different group of people than I was expecting would sign up for these free coaching. And then I started converting and converting and converting. And then people wanted to hire me for the HR work. And then I built a team and people needed HR admin and recruiting and all the different pieces. So now we basically have a full scale agency that we've built from what was essentially me doing executive coaching and offering free coaching. And it just turned into a thriving business from there.
That is amazing. What a beautiful story. I love
Thank
that. That,
you.
that probably gives a lot of listeners hope that whatever your expertise is, like, there will be opportunities. It will make room for you, right? Whatever you are good at, there's going to be, a future in that. So I love that. I think that that's so cool how that just kind of organically happened for you. I also love
Yeah.
how you said the whole crisis thing, right? How, you mentioned how death is a moment of crisis. There's these moments that are really hard to navigate. And I can speak from my own experience when I was let go from my position years ago, about now it's 11 years ago. And for me, it was a very devastating moment. And, in my career trajectory and all that. And so for me, I know exactly how that is. It's like a crisis. It's like, what do? You were not expecting this. Like, what? You're not ready for the next move. Can you kind of talk to us about that? I know
Yeah.
you talk a lot about this, about, transitions without crisis, right? So
Yep.
can you talk to us about how do people do career transitions? Whether I think it's sometimes when they're laid off and it wasn't expected, or sometimes they want to go into a completely different path, a completely different career field that they have no experience in, but that also can be really scary and a lot of
Mhm.
people stay stuck. So can you kind of talk to us about how to do all of this without it being a crisis?
Yeah, and I think the answer is a lot of the people that I do before I address that, I do get a lot of people that are in crisis first, and that's okay. Like it's much better if you don't do it that way, but if you are already in crisis, pull yourself back, find a coach, figure out how to like progress. Now, to do it without a crisis means you need to be thinking ahead, and that's really the ideal way to do a career pivot is to know that you don't need to leave tomorrow, you're not getting terminated tomorrow, that nothing is about to happen, but you can start planning out what your moves look like. And I'd say the first thing you need to understand is what the market looks like in terms of where you're trying to do this. And right now this is not an easy pivot market. Sorry, I hate giving bad advice like that. Like, oh, it's
Yeah.
not a good time. But
Yeah.
if you are going to make a pivot, you just need to know what the timeline looks like, right? So like in a market where it's a pivot friendly, like this was like 2021, 2022, very
Mhm.
pivot friendly, very career change friendly time period, because there were lots of jobs, people were taking chances on people. You know that you've got a timeline that's going to be a little bit quicker. It's going to be a little bit easier. Now it's a little bit harder. You can still make a pivot, but you need to be really smart about the actions you take to get there. So my first take is, where do you want to get to, and work backwards, and know that there's going to probably be some stair steps that you're going to need to take to get there. Thinking about what are the adjacencies in the market that you're currently in, getting a cohesive story so that you can translate your experience across different industries. And it's a more universal story that's easily understandable for people that don't necessarily understand the corporate jargon that you're currently in. So, doing your research, really understanding where you want to go, really understanding what the translatable skills you have that you're going to try and make there, and then understanding what the progression looks like so that you're prepared for it. Because I think to me the biggest key is, one, that you have the right people in your life to help you get there, whether the ones who love you or the ones who are helping you along the actual journey itself, and then two, understanding where you're trying to get to. Three, having realistic expectations on how long it's going to take you to get there. And four, enjoy the journey getting there, because the learnings that you make on the way over there can really be miserable and unpleasant, or you can choose to take them as just one more stepping stone to kind of get you to that next space. But to me, it's key to have the right people around you to be able to get there. So I'd say to avoid crisis, you need the right people.
That's great. And what do you mean by the right people? Do you mean like the right support system at home, or do you mean like the right bosses? What are you referring to as the right
I'm
people?
so glad you asked me that question. It's almost like I queued you up to ask me that. So I always talk about your connections, right? Segmenting your connections and segmenting the people that are in your life. So I call them, there's the A team, which those are the people who love you, the people who understand you, they know your work, they care about you. If they had a job for you, they would hand it to you because they know that they love you and you're great at what you do. So that's your A team. And then we've got the sort of casual crew, is what I call them. And those are the people that are your second connections, your Pilates friends, the ones you worked with 8 years ago who still remember you but don't really know that much about you. And these are the people, this is where people are making moves. Like these are the group of people that you really need to be nurturing to be able to make moves. Because as I mentioned, those A team people already know what you're looking for and what you want to do and that you do want to make that pivot and would have already told you about that job or that thing or whatever it is because they know you. It's this group here that has a loose tie to you that you need to really nurture and make sure you have around you. Those are your coaches, your people who are going to help you out. And then there's the third group, which is the gatekeepers to the things that you want. So those are the recruiters, the hiring managers, the people who are running the programs that you want to get into. And those are the ones that are probably most likely to reject you for whatever the thing is that you're asking them for. So you need to know to budget your time between these three groups of people, right? The ones who love you, the ones who know you sort of a little bit, and then the ones who are gatekeeping the jobs and the things that you want. And you want a good mix of connecting with those people over time so that you have more rejection in this space, less rejection
Yeah.
in this space. So you want to like spread them out so that you can make sure that you have like a good mix of all of those, because all three of those are going to create opportunity for you.
I love that. And do you mean, for example, do you mean like coffee dates? Like what does this look like in a practical
Yeah.
way? Does this mean like coffee dates, or does this mean like be posting on LinkedIn, or what does this look like?
All of the above. Yeah. And that's a great question. So, one, it's outreach, right? Just doing your direct outreach for warm or cold in LinkedIn DMs, in old email addresses, in getting people to introduce you to their friends, in Slack channels, in communities, in groups, in whatever the spaces are, going to events and doing things in person, joining Zoom chats, wherever the spaces are that you can connect with people. And then it's also meeting with people. It's setting up networking calls, it's setting up 20-minute conversations, and then it's being prepared to have those conversations, having a plan for how you do it. And I actually have a structure for a networking call that makes it a little bit easier for those that are uncomfortable. And then it's having a goal in mind at the end of that. And like, where do you go for all of these different pieces? You can kind of think about, there's the written communication, there's the in-person communication, and then there's the sort of Zoom and phone call networking conversations. And
Yeah.
again, we want a nice mix of all of these things to be able to like continue that process of figuring out what you want to do next, figuring out how to get there, and talking to the people that are going to help make those introductions.
Love that. And I love how you mentioned that you have like a framework for that, or some
I
sort of
do.
guide for that, because I think it's so often that I think it's awkward for a lot of people. I think it's like I'll have one approach with one
Yeah.
person, but then the other person, it's like, okay, I haven't talked to you in all these years. How do I convey that, hey, we worked together 8 years ago, I'm not trying to use you, I'm just
Right.
putting my out, like it's a very, I feel like it's a very slippery slope where it's like walking like a tightrope. Like it's tricky, right? It's like you want to be kind and compassionate and caring and authentic, and then but you also, you just, I just, of course you're going to get those thoughts of like, I don't want this person to feel you.
Transactional. That's the word. You're
Exactly.
like transactional. Yeah. And I think, to my point of being prepared, I think networking is a consistent thing that you need to be doing all the time. And I think you need to, no matter what, if it is a short term or a long term play for you, you need to always treat it as though it's a long term play, even if it is a short term play. Because people know, like people feel that. People
Yeah.
feel the transactionality of it if you only
Yes.
come to them when you're asking for something. So my take is to nurture your connections all the time and constantly be networking with people, even if you're not looking for something. But I think there's a reciprocal way that you can approach people too, both in writing and verbally and in person, in a way that doesn't feel uncomfortable. So I can tell you what my framework looks like for what those conversations should sound
Sure.
like, and if you want, and I can
Love
like kind of
that.
walk you
Yes.
through. I think it's kind of foolproof, but like you can add to it or change it around as needed for yourself. But the way I tell people to structure a networking conversation, and similar to how you would structure like an outreach email, is you start with, hey, let's do a story share, right? I always start a networking conversation with, let's do a story share. You give me 2 minutes on your background and I'll give you 2 minutes on my background. Give them a time frame, give them an idea, and then you go first if they ask you to go first so they know what to expect. So that's your introduction piece of it. And then the second piece is, what are you working on right now? So this is your opportunity to share about what you're doing, and they get an opportunity to share about what they're doing. And then the third segment is the, who should I know in this space? So when you walk into a networking conversation or you write into a networking conversation, it should always be, you bring one person to the table for them, they bring one person to the table for you. You try to walk away with one new friend or one new person to connect with, and you make sure that you are reciprocal, again, offering them a person to connect with from your network as well. So now we've got something about you. What are you currently working on that I like? How can I help? That's your reciprocal.
Love
How can I
that.
help you with what you're working on right now? Who can I introduce you to? And then if the conversation goes well, structuring a follow-up of, hey, let's keep in touch, as vague as that could be, or hey, let's schedule another conversation 2 months from now. What times work great from you, or what times work great for you? And then, like, what does your follow-up look like after that? Putting something on your calendar, put all the salient details about the person, and then following up after the conversation to make sure you continue that conversation. So,
Love
and if you do this, it's really easy. Right? Because then you have like 4 things that you're trying to get through. You're offering reciprocity to give them some help with whatever their business is or whatever they're trying to do next. And you walk away with a new connection and they walk away with a new connection and a follow-up. And if
Yeah.
you can do that in a networking conversation, whether 10 minutes or 20 minutes or 30 minutes long, I'm telling you, it makes for the most comfortable networking conversation I've seen out there in the world.
I love that. I love that. I think that makes that kind of covers all the bases without it being really
Mhm.
awkward. Would you recommend this to be like if you are in like a community and you're in like a big Zoom call, or do you see this as something where you're like, hey, I'm gonna reach out to someone in my LinkedIn and just do this myself? Or is
Either
there like
direction. I mean, you can kind of do it
yeah,
either way. Like you can sort of do a similar thing, like if you're doing an outreach blurb, like a LinkedIn DM, it would be like, hey, here's a little bit about me. How can I help you with your work? Here, I was thinking you might want to join me in this Slack channel or meet one of my friends. If there's anyone in my network I can introduce you to, please let me know. Thank you so much. If you don't have time for this right now, let's connect in the future. No pressure.
yeah.
The end. Right. So you could
Wow.
do that in a very simple
Wow.
outreach blurb,
Yeah.
but then you can do a similar type of thing verbally in person. Like, hey, like, tell me about yourself. How can I help you? Like, but it's really like 4 lines. It's the,
Yeah.
tell me about yourself. What are you working on right now? How can I help you? Who can I introduce you to? Let's
Yeah.
follow up.
Love that. Love that. That is such a
Right? Super. It's really basic. I feel like it's not like that exciting, but
no,
honestly, it
it
takes
makes
that
so much sense.
pressure away.
Yeah, no, it makes so much sense because I feel like naturally if I think back at like good moments or good networking moments that I've had, it kind of follows that more or less, right? So it
Right.
basically it in a nutshell. That's a great way of like bullet
It's
pointing it and
comfy.
making it very like putting handles on it. So I love that. I love that. And so I think this is so cool. And you also another topic that you talk about that I think is so
Mhm.
fascinating is you talk about negotiations, right?
I
Like how
do.
do you negotiate without feeling like everything's on the line and all that? What advice would you give to someone that is listening and they have no idea when it comes to negotiation? Like
Yeah.
they're just not great at negotiating. It's an awkward thing for them.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much here, right? Like we could talk about negotiating for like 3 hours. So I'll keep some of like the key pieces to it. So my master's is actually in negotiation, conflict resolution, and peace building.
Oh wow.
And I did it with an organizational conflict background. So, I got to learn from this really incredible entertainment lawyer who did like casting for high level entertainment people. And he was like,
Wow.
negotiate everything. And it was just like a really great lesson on, the worst somebody can say is no is the thing that I keep telling people in a negotiation. The worst somebody says is no, and you can take it anyway. The worst
Yeah.
somebody says is no, and I can take it anyway. And
Yeah.
in the years and years that I've worked in this space and worked with thousands, actually, I guess now, of people, I've only once ever had somebody revoke an offer because somebody negotiated too hard. And that was like 10 years ago. And it was also just the person was just not
Okay.
nice. And I
Yeah.
think there was
Yeah.
probably more to it that was
Yeah. It
probably
wasn't just
going on,
that.
if we're really
Yeah.
being honest, than the negotiation. But
Yeah.
ultimately, when you go into a negotiation, the understanding is that, both people are here to negotiate, right? Like it's not just you that's negotiating. The company on the other side, the client on the other side is negotiating as well. So it is a normal human experience. Similar
Yeah.
to how people get uncomfortable with networking, we all get nervous. We all get a little bit concerned. And when you take yourself out of the equation and you think about yourself as somebody that you would negotiate for, I think it's a really great way for you to kind of like remove your personal feelings from it too. So, like, let's say this is your sister. Instead of thinking about, negotiating for myself, I'm going to think about if my sister were negotiating in this situation, what would I tell her to do? Because frankly, I'm more impressed with my sister than I am with myself. I feel more confident in negotiating for somebody else. So I'd say, not to say dissociate yourself from yourself, but like take yourself out of the equation. Think about your background and what you've done. I always tell people to write out your biggest accomplishments before you go into a negotiation, or review it on your resume, review it on your LinkedIn, so you can remember, heck yeah, I am a badass, right? Like I am really cool. And then you can go into that conversation already hyped up, thinking about the things that you're doing. Now, the other thing that you want to do is always think about a negotiation as a space where kindness is really important. That when you frame something and the way you talk about something, it's so much more important than what you're actually asking for in a negotiation, because that's how people experience you. It's all about perception. So asking in a nice way, being firm with your asks, not backing away. This is something that women tend to do a lot, is not backing away from your ask once you ask it. So not going, oh, I want $130,000, 20% bonus, and then going, if
Yeah.
that's okay with you.
Oh, yes.
The
Yeah.
if that's okay with you is such a natural disclaimer, reaction, caveat, whatever you want to call it. In a
Yes.
negotiation, we do not want to do that. We want to let it sit. You need to be comfortable with silence, and then you wait for the other person to come back in again, a kind, gentle way, but we are not going to pull back from what we're talking about in a negotiation. So I'd say hype yourself up, do your neurosomatic breathing. So like do your breathing, like tone your vagus nerve, get yourself out of fight or flight before you go into those conversations. If you're able to, put them in writing because it gives you a lot more clarity. And like don't back away from your ask. Just know that like if you're going to ask for something, let it sit there. If the answer is no, you got to be okay with that too. But know that most people in general want to meet you somewhere closer. It's just human nature. It's part of our nature to want to come closer when someone's asking for something, to meet you somewhere in the middle. So you often are going to get something more, even if it's not exactly what you're looking for. And the other thing that I think is really important about negotiations is the end of it. Because now that you've negotiated hard with somebody, you've asked for things, you've gotten what you want, your level of gratitude once you're done with that needs to be, I am so thrilled to be here, have you as a client, take this job, whatever it is. And I think the gratitude that you express after a tough negotiation is almost more important than the negotiation itself in terms of how people perceive you when you
Right.
join an organization or as a client or as a consulting, whatever the thing is that you're doing. So making sure that you kind of go in that direction afterwards, really, really key.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's I've never heard of that actually, the gratitude afterwards, because I think as women, I think a lot of times because we do shy away from like if it's okay
Yeah.
and do those kind of things, I think it's often that we try to like change ourselves and be like, no, I'm going to be like very like stern face and tough, and I'm going to negotiate and just be like, they're lucky to have me. And then maybe even if it's your nature, you may walk out a little bit more and like a little bit tougher than you normally would, and that's not your personality. So I love that you're saying that we should be grateful at that moment, and that's a great point to make, right? That we should also be very thankful at the end and just show our personalities, be grateful.
And I think it's on both ends, right? Like if you're the person holding, like I was talking about the gatekeepers before, right? Like let's say you're the gatekeeper of something that somebody wants. You also need to understand with the empathy of they're not trying to come at you and get too much. They're just trying to get what they think is fair for the most part. I mean, there's like,
Yeah.
2% of the population that's just out there going, give me everything.
Yeah.
But for the most part, most people are just trying to, get what's fair and get what they deserve on the front end of things. And likewise, they're trying to protect the company or the thing or whatever, the money or whatever it is on the other end, and protect themselves too. So I think approaching it with empathy helps you by the end of the conversation too. Cause like some of these negotiations when I was working in recruiting would get rough. It was like, no, I can't do that for you, but we really do want you to work here. Or that person would be like, no, I can't take that salary, but I really do want to work there. So I think like the way you approach the empathy of understanding that each side of this has things that they need to worry about, that when you do finally land on that middle ground, that everybody's happy.
Yeah.
The other thing that I would say is never negotiate from a place of fear. And it's hard to do that right now because this market is tough and people get a little bit desperate. But the more desperate you experience a
Mhm.
negotiation, one, it messes with your positioning, and
Right.
two, it messes with your attitude sometimes too. So if you're desperate, sometimes that can come across as pushy, whereas you really just want it to be fair.
Right.
And so I think thinking about how you come across, practicing with somebody in advance, because a lot of times you don't hear your own tone. A lot of times you don't hear how you sound to people. And it's about how you're perceived on the other side. That's really important. Way more important than what you actually meant is how you're being perceived. So making sure that you're practicing in advance so that that empathy and that gratitude comes across rather than it just sounding like you're creating a hard line, because nobody likes that. It doesn't feel
Right.
good when people negotiate too hard.
Right, right. I love that. I love that. And Kate, you are thriving. You are thriving in so many areas. It's really cool how
Thank
much
you.
information you've already given our audience. Like you are like I say this in a nice way, but you are a beast when it comes to HR and like
Thank
career advice
you.
and all things like such a force. And I think it's really cool. But was there ever a season in your life where you feel like maybe you failed? And if so, what did you learn from that season?
Yeah, like every day, friend. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Okay, so I talk about this all the time. And one of the things that you'll always get from me in my LinkedIn posts, always from me in my coaching sessions is I live in imposter syndrome every day. I get nervous. I deal with some really high-powered people. Like I was talking to an executive from like a Fortune 2 company
Wow.
2 hours ago. And I
Wow.
get nervous. I get nervous sometimes. And I often wonder why people still listen to me and hear my advice. And I have those moments of doubt daily. I think it's normal. I don't know. Maybe it's not normal, but in my mind, it is to have those kind of experiences and go through it anyway. Because I think, all of us sit in a space where things seem normal to us that we know, right? Knowledge is something that we sit with every day and we experience our own knowledge every day. And you just think that it's normal that people know
Right.
this stuff. And that's something I learned through the process where the things that come naturally to me and that I know about are things that people want to hear. To your point, like I give advice out here and people are like, "Oh my God, that was such good advice." And I'm like, "Oh, you didn't know that already?" Right?
Yeah.
I just
Yeah.
thought that was like sort of common knowledge that people understood that. So I'd say every person has that in them, but we all feel like we don't have the knowledge that other people have around us. And
Right.
that's what creates that sense of sort of imposter syndrome, or like maybe we don't know enough because we're constant learners. So if we're talking about actual failure, though,
Mhm.
one of the things that I didn't understand when I came out into the market that I really failed at was people's emotions. So I don't know if you can tell from me, but I'm a very action oriented person. And I was like, let's get you up and get you into a job. Let's go. Let's go. I want people to have that perceived value of the
Yeah.
work that I'm doing. And in my mind, action orientation equals value. If I move you forward faster, if I get you to your job faster, I've created more value for you. And that's what I needed in myself to feel like I was valuable to my clients. And what happened was all of these layoffs that have gone on over the last 2 or 3 years have been intensely emotional. COVID, all of these spaces that are very emotional. And I learned about myself that I was failing my clients by not slowing
Mm.
down and
Mm.
allowing people to experience. I'm like, people would come in and be like, let's write my resume. And then they'd start sobbing. And I'm like, I
Yeah.
can't write your resume until you stop sobbing. Like I
Wow.
need to help you get past this workplace trauma that you're having here. But I had never built any sessions in because I thought that action orientation was what I needed to do. So I kind
Yeah.
of failed the first couple of clients in the layoff space until I realized I needed to ask the right questions of like, hey, do we need to take a step back and peel the onion back before we write your resume to understand why you can't write this resume right now? Like, what are the feelings and emotions under the surface that
Yeah.
are really kind of stopping you from going forward in this job search? And once I started doing that, I realized, certain people want that and certain people don't, but it was on me to make sure that I was providing a safe space for them to do that. So I really failed at being empathetic,
Yeah.
truly, in the first couple of months of my layoff coaching that now I've perfected, I think, in most cases, being able to understand what somebody needs first and then being able to move forward from there.
Yeah, I love that. I think what you're saying is so true. I've had experiences like that where it's like you need to give yourself time to grieve, but then on the other
Yeah.
hand, I've also had opportunities where it's like I gave myself too much time to grieve. So kind of doing the opposites, it's a really tricky thing there, but I love how you've kind of built in a little bit of time to kind of what's going on here? Let's move forward because I think that's real. Because if they don't, they'll go into the next job or they're going to the next moment and they are not ready, if you will,
Well, I
emotionally.
mean, and it would be like it's not worth their money in some ways too for
Yeah.
me to force them into building this resume right now when what you really needed was
Yeah.
the ability to understand which pieces of your resume were causing you stress. I
Right.
mean, because if you think about it, like people say this all the time too after a job loss or if they're looking to make moves that they just feel stuck. They feel
Yeah.
like they can't get started.
Yes.
And it's a symptom of a lot of other things too.
Yes.
But like if you can't get started, there's a reason. It's not
Yeah.
like you're still equally as valuable as you were when you left that job. Nothing
Yeah.
changed today to yesterday.
Mhm.
You just aren't in that job anymore. Your skill set's still equally as valuable. So why are you struggling to get it down on paper? Why are you struggling to write your story? And a lot of times there's a couple of other things that we need to get past before we get there. And people don't even realize those. So like being able to peel that onion back. But it was I'm a pretty empathetic person. I always have been. I've worked in HR. I've been, generally a nice person most of my life, I think. But
Yeah.
but I was really missing that. And that was a big fail for me when I realized that I was doing that to my clients and that it was because of my own insecurities of wanting to be as effective as possible, as fast as possible. It was such a learning for me. I had to like kind of take myself
Yeah.
out of it and go, "Oh, wow, I'm really failing here. I need to fix this." So I started building offerings around that, and it was shocking to me how many people took me up on it. So I was like, "Okay, great. Well, this is a space that I need to play in. This is a space that I
Love
need
it.
to offer to people." So, yeah, I
Yeah.
think, learning is such a huge thing
Mhm.
when you start your own business, when you're going out for a pivot, when you're making your career change. And to your
Yeah.
point of avoiding crisis, I think the acceptance of the fact that like you're not going to have it figured out the first time, that you're probably going to make a lot of mistakes, and just being okay with that and being comfortable with it makes it feel a lot less pressure.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. So many things of what you've said have resonated so much with me. I wish I would
Oh,
have met you 10 years ago when I was
oh, that's so
well,
nice. I love
my career
that.
crisis. This is exactly what I would have needed. So cool that you exist now and
Oh,
that you're doing
thank
this. So I
you.
love that. I love that. And what advice would you give to someone that maybe doesn't have a linear career path? Because I think so often,
Mm,
especially nowadays, it's like sometimes we'll go into one industry and then you get pushed into another,
yep.
and life just happens.
Yeah, and I'd say, people ask this is one of the questions that people ask me more than any other question, and I'm going to give two pieces of advice. So the first one is you need a cohesive story. And it doesn't have to mean that your career is linear. You just need to have a cohesive story, and everyone can tell that story a little bit differently. So I do something called a bucketing exercise where I truly believe that everybody in the world, from CEO all the way down, can put all of their experiences into three buckets. And, there's a people bucket, usually a process bucket, and then I call it the choose your own adventure bucket. That's like another bucket. And
Yeah.
pretty much every piece of everything you've ever done in your career fits into a people, a process, or whatever that third bucket is that's unique to you. And if you can figure out how to segment out the things that you do, you can figure out how to build them into a story that, whether linear or not, makes sense for people. And I'll give you an example. So for some people, that story that you tell about your career is about, I had a foundation in this, and then I moved into this space, and now I've pivoted into this space. And you tell your story in that way. For some people, it's industry specific. I spent time doing this people and process in this industry, and then I spent time doing this people and process in this industry, and now I'm doing it here. And that's a little bit of a different type of story. But like, I do believe that if you can boil down the core of your story, you can tell that story regardless of whether your career is linear or not, because there are commonalities and competencies, behaviors, experiences that, as long as you can boil them back down to the core of them, that you can explain them across industry, across function, across department. But I do think that that's really hard to do for yourself. And
Yeah.
I'm not making a pitch necessarily for my coaching, but finding somebody else to help you craft that story, because I can't do it for myself. My story is very confusing to me because I'm so attached to it.
Mm,
But when
that
you
makes
get
sense.
outside of yourself and you talk to somebody else, they can kind of help you craft that story. And then my second piece of advice for people who have nonlinear careers is don't try too hard to make them fit together. Instead, talk about segments of your career. And there's the segment where I did this, and there's the segment where I did this, but having an overarching theme of the type of work that you do that you can wrap as a bow around it can be really useful. Because I talk about this, right? So I ran retail stores for 10 years, and then I went into talent acquisition, and then I went into HR, and then I went into consulting. But the bow around all of that is activating business strategy through people strategy. And I can tie each one of those pieces of my career together with people strategy and business strategy and connecting those two pieces together. So like find the through line of your career before you try to talk about your career to anyone else if you have a nonlinear career.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I think one thing that you said that I think is great is that sometimes, for example, if you have a very industry specific, you're like a I guess what you said was that you are emotionally attached to your story,
Yes.
which I can speak to because I feel like I used to work in television, broadcast news, and national news for many years. And when I was let go from a position, it was really hard for me. I was like, I have to find something else in TV
Yeah.
in this market because now I'm married and I have to stay in the city and now I can't move to another city. So it was a tricky thing for me for a while, but it was like, how do I take my TV skills and translate them into other things, right? And I think that happens to so many people in different industries, right? You have very industry specific skills you think, but then when you take a step back, then you start realizing, wait, this is a process thing, or this is, I know how to create a system. This is just, I understand how the workflow is for a news show, or I understand the workflow for producing, a story for national TV, which is understanding the workflow or managing different pieces that can, you can apply it to different industries and different things.
Right. And
So
you take it back to its core, right? Because ultimately everything boils down to, is it project management? Is it cross functional skills? Is
yes,
it decision making? Is it problem solving? Like, what
yes,
are the things that are at the core of the work that you're actually doing? And then all you need to do to make pivots or talk about linear careers is understand the jargon in that particular segment,
yeah,
department, function,
yeah,
industry. And then
right,
you can apply the skill sets to that industry, but like the ability to speak to whatever industry you're in is key. This is why I was talking about research if you're going to make a career pivot, because I'll give you an example. So it took me a while to get out of retail, right? And I didn't really get out of retail, but to make a move out of retail, I needed an adjacency that I could understand and I could speak to. So when
yeah,
I moved myself from retail to CPG, consumer goods, it's the difference between clothing and food is it's not a huge difference. They're both products, but it is a different language. They speak a different language in this space. But what I had were selling skills, team skills, recruiting skills, the ability to put a plan together, a long-term plan, and all of those skills were equally as crucial in the new industry I was in. I just needed to know how to explain them through the lens of that particular industry. And to your point, if you can understand a workflow in TV broadcast, you can understand a workflow in a lot of places because systems are similar. You just have to know how to explain them. So that's my point of like, you just totally got it too, right? It's bringing it back to the core of what you know how to do, which is building a workflow. And how
right.
do you do that in multiple different industries, right?
Right, right. I love this. I think this is such a great conversation. It's so much clarity. I know that
Yay.
again, I wish I would have met you 10 years ago. It would have been so helpful. But I think that this is so great. I think so many people can use this and this, like how to translate your skill set from one industry to another.
Yeah.
You don't lose just because you're in a different industry. Now you're going into a completely different industry. You don't lose what you've done in the past. Like you don't lose, you like it all adds up. It all helps what you're
Yeah.
moving into. I think that is a common misconception. I'm so empowered by this conversation. Oh my gosh, Kate, it has been such a pleasure to have you on.
Oh, yay. I want to come back. You're so much fun to talk to. This has been so fun.
Yeah,
I honestly, my biggest challenge in life is that, and I always joke about like, I'm the person who puts like way too much content in every deck that I ever create and every conversation that I ever have, because there's just so much.
yeah.
Right? Like we all have so much to share. So yeah, thanks for letting me have an opportunity to share
Oh,
some of my weird knowledge.
it's great. I love it. It's so needed. Again, I think it's such a needed thing, and I think it helps so many listeners. So, where can people find you? Where can they follow you? How can they work with you if they're like, man, I need to get with Kate because she's what I need in my life?
Yeah.
Where can you go?
I love it. So you can find me on LinkedIn. I have like 35,000 followers on LinkedIn. I don't always have space in my connections. So just come follow me, comment, chat, come into DMs. I love to connect with people on LinkedIn. I'm on all the other social channels too, just not I'm newer to those. I'm very nerdy. I'm not great on TikTok yet, but I'm trying to figure it out. And then you can come find me at kjs.consulting if you're looking for individual coaching, group coaching. We run programs, we run series. We've got one on how to build your consulting company, one on how to get a job. And then we have built-in networks that come along with all of these as well, because we have a pretty large community. And then if you're interested in consulting or, creating a give back model as part of your consulting or being a part of a community, come join the Plus One Collective. I always refer to myself as your career plus one. So bring me along for the ride and we're happy to help. But we've got a whole group of career plus ones out there in all different industries looking to do the consulting side of things, side hustles, solopreneur life. So come join us and come hang out with us over there. But I'm happy to help anyone I can. I have free coaching that I offer every week. I do up to 10 free coaching sessions, 20-minute sessions on LinkedIn profile review. And I promise I don't do a lot of biz dev in those, almost none, unfortunately. But I will teach people how to build out their LinkedIn profiles and things like that too in these free sessions. But they book out like a month to a month and a half these days. So definitely keep an eye out if you're looking for one of the free coaching sessions. But yeah, come find me, come chat with me. Let's debate on LinkedIn and, nice to meet all of you out there.
Yes, I think we have to have you back on to talk about LinkedIn. That was one of my questions.
I would love to talk about LinkedIn.
I took a big hiatus from LinkedIn, so I would love to hear all the things as I dive
Yes, and the algorithm is constantly changing. So it's every time you talk to somebody about LinkedIn, it's all new information too. But yeah, love to come back and chat about LinkedIn.
Yay. Okay. Well, thanks so much.
Thank you.